Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm delighted to welcome my very special guest to the show today, Christopher Gravagna. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn. Very appreciative.
You're so welcome. And I want to tell our audience a little bit about you, and then you and I are going to dive into a juicy conversation. Christopher, you're 40 years old, and you've got 20 years of experience, half your life in the media and marketing industry. Fueled by an entrepreneurial spirit at a young age, you started your first business at the age of 12, and you've continued to expand and develop your business savvy to include diverse companies from matchmaking websites, mini storage facilities, and now most recently, business financing. And your most recent venture, you are the co-founder and CMO for your company, GoAccredited Business Solutions, which offers working capital and business loans to small to medium-sized businesses. And you've got this incredible culture focused on providing exceptional service and transparency to businesses in need. So, Christopher, let's chat. When a business needs additional capital, what are the options available, especially in this economy?
Right. So most people think, I have a business and I have the ability to go to a traditional bank, right, to your Chase or your Citibank. And those are a viable option for about 25% of the small businesses in the market today. Because they're going to base their decisions very heavily on your personal credit score.
Right.
They're going to base that very heavily on your time in business. Most banks won't look at you if you're under 3 years in business, which is very difficult when you're a new business and you're growing. Also, the big thing with banks is that you have to be prepared to deal with an enormous amount of paperwork, right?
Yep.
Profit and losses, tax returns, and that the timing sometimes isn't always right because you need a lot of companies. When they figure out that they need money, they need it pretty quickly, right? And banks have the ability to drag along and then tell you no after 30, 45
Right, after
days.
they've dragged you along, yeah.
Right, and it's no. So what we've understood is that banks traditionally are going to approve 25%, so that leaves 75% of the market that don't have options within the traditional banking industry. Another way companies can access capital, and according to what they're using the money for, is through equipment financing, right? A lot of companies may need to buy, a pizzeria needs to buy a pizza oven, a restaurant needs to buy refrigeration or HVAC units. A construction company needs to buy a new excavator or something of that sort. There are equipment financing needs where people say, oh, I got to get capital. Well, in some cases, if you need it for specific types of equipment, you can use equipment financing programs. Typically, they're also very similar to a bank. So they're looking at your credit history. They're looking at, your time in business. They're a little bit more flexible because they're using the equipment as collateral, but they're still very stringent in who they're lending capital to. The third and almost fourth type of funding, and some of what we do, is in more the alternative financing space. Where we're lending based on your receivables, right? We're looking at the health of your company. We do take credit score into part of our evaluation, but we lend people with poor and bad credit. Because we're not going to look at someone that maybe got dinged because they were dealing with a bankruptcy or they were possibly going through a divorce or they were dealing with the recession and they weren't able to pay a creditor because of a reason. There are circumstances within individuals' life. That doesn't mean that they're not willing to pay a loan, right? Or they're not running a good business. So we really, we like to base our decisions really based on the assets and the health of the company. But and in that alternative financing arena, you also have traditional factor companies that will lend off of a invoice, right? So I get an invoice or a purchase order from an organization, and they're could say they're going to pay us $10,000. There's a factor company that will just pay for that invoice. That's more what the traditional factoring companies have done. For us, we're really looking at it from a monthly standpoint. We found that businesses have the ability to be more successful if we don't piecemeal them their singular asset, but really take their monthly asset of receivables and lend that way. But that's when you look at options, just kind of recap, it's your traditional banking options, it's your equipment financing, and then you kind of have this hybrid in the alternative financing market with factoring.
So I love that you call it a hybrid and this alternative option. How did you come to this as a business model? Was there a personal experience that you had? This is a fascinating business. How did you get started?
Well, I wish I had this alternative
Yeah,
finance
yeah.
model so one of my companies was a print media company, and we were doing about $1 million plus a month in revenue.
Wow.
And it was always a challenge. We had, we were dealing with Fortune 500 companies paying us in 60, 90, and 120 days.
Yeah.
But we had to lay out the money for the cost of goods, right? So
Hmm.
we're buying the paper, the ink, and it was constant, right? And it was personally taking less money, putting money back into the company, working on credit lines, but it was constantly a challenge. Yet we had an extremely healthy business. I was blessed to be able to sell that company to a much bigger company, and it worked out. But as we got larger in our revenue, cash flow became actually more of a challenge. So I wish I had this. This alternative financing has really been over the last 7 years has really started to come into the marketplace, really forced into the marketplace.
Yeah.
And my experience of how I got into it, I've been in the marketing and media space for, again, going on 20 years, print media marketing. And actually a colleague or a relationship of mine that was in this industry came to me to build their marketing infrastructure. And after 3 months of coming on as an interim, it turned into there was seen the asset, and basically we negotiated where I'm a substantial partner in the organization. I manage now over 7 offices nationally
Wow.
for the organization that we own, and yeah, it's been great. So he was breaking up with the previous partner. I came in. It was at the right thing. We co-founded this new entity together.
That's incredible. So, Christopher, let's talk a little bit more about alternative lending specifically, since that's your sweet spot now.
Yep.
What should a wise business owner be considering before they borrow?
So, and now, do you want to talk specifically about what should they be thinking about an alternative or as a whole?
Well, I'd like to hear certainly what you can do for them. What kinds of things can GoAccredited do for them, and what should they be thinking of before they come to you?
Right, and I think, and first of all, they should always be thinking about traditional first.
Okay.
If a business owner has the ability to get a very low rate from a bank, and spread it out over time, that's always the best option, right? We want our businesses to be successful,
Okay.
and there's businesses that are going to be the right fit. If someone has a 750 credit score, they've been in business 15 years, and they don't need the money right away, and it's something that they can use in 60 to 120 days. They're willing to wait. They're going to get a great rate from a bank, maybe even 5%, and that's going to be a lot less than our interest rate. But they got to be prepared that if they're going to take that money, they are going to have to personal guarantee it. There is going to be an extensive amount of paperwork that's necessary, and they're going to be capped usually, especially for their first loan, probably closer to anywhere between $100 to $250,000.
Hmm.
So there are definitely going to be constraints on going through the banking side, and definitely going to be personal liabilities that they're going to have to be conscious of when they're going the traditional banking route. But for us, when we go to our business owners, it's very important for us the use of proceeds, right? Because typically we are a higher interest rate. We're going to
Right.
charge anywhere between 15% into the mid 30s for a very short period of time, right? Anywhere between 3 months to 18 months are our typical loans, right? There we call them micro loans because of just in the way that we collect the capital back and the length of time and the duration of the loans. But so when they're looking, so we're looking at a client, or where they're looking at us. Um, the reason why I say we look at them, because we want to make sure they're the right fit
Yeah.
for our product, right? If they're someone that they're going to be utilizing this capital for inventory, if they're going to be using it to expand their business, if they're going to be using it during their slow season to make sure that some people are a seasonal business, if they're going to be using it to hire new employees or even to drive advertising and marketing, these are all things that could produce a higher ROI
Right.
than what it would cost them for our capital. And that's important to us. We want the business owner to take this capital, make 100, 200, 300% on this capital. So if we have to charge them 20 to 30%, they're getting the benefit of our capital.
Got it. Thank you for setting that up. That's very helpful. And I know so many of my listeners are entrepreneurs. So what types of businesses are best suited for your alternative lending options versus traditional? I want them to self-identify out there, and
Of course.
perhaps you can give us some examples with also
I,
respecting confidentiality of your
Yeah,
clients.
I would love to, and some I could be a little bit more vague, but yet they're big franchises that
Okay.
we lend to. Typically we're dealing with a lot of restaurants,
Hmm.
HVAC companies, contractors, beauty salons. We're actually dealing with a lot of dentists and doctors. A lot of people, oh, why dentists and doctors? Well, they're not
Equipment.
getting paid. They're not
Yeah.
between equipment, but also they're not getting paid from the insurance companies for 90 and 120 days, if not
Right.
longer sometimes.
Right.
So companies that are having cash flow challenges, or they're dealing with vendors that are not paying them for anywhere between 60 to 180 days, we're a great alternative financing source for them. Right? It's a cash and carry businesses, and a lot of people think, oh, well, restaurants are cash and carry. Yeah, but they're very intensive when it comes to equipment, and they're very intensive in having to purchase inventory. Same thing with liquor stores. Liquor stores is great a great client of ours that we work with. And we have about 30 different industries that are what are on our top industry list. I have no problem sharing that with you and sending it to you for this podcast. But just to give you a couple of few, I mean, gas stations with convenience stores we do,
Hmm.
liquor stores, I said that before, jewelry stores, hardware stores, people that have an intensive inventory, people that are waiting, 60 to 90, 120 days are great candidates for our product. Another thing that's very important, we dealt a lot of this, especially with my partner did, when there's emergency situations, when things like Sandy happen
Right.
in New
Right.
York, a bank isn't lending you money in 72 hours.
Mm-mm.
We can, right? So if there's an emergency, there's a natural disaster, there's an issue, something that happens, we're a great source if there's an emergency situation as well. Or that emergency situation may be an opportunity, right? They
Right.
just got a phone call to do an order that's going to cost them $100,000. They don't have the cash flow. It could be an emergency that's very positive as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I don't like to focus on the negative at all.
Yeah.
That's part of my mantra. But thinking of an emergency in a positive way, we're a great source because no banking institution is going to lend you money in a short period of time.
I like that. I like how you think cup half full, because sometimes that emergency is, wow, we just got a million orders for the widget and we need supplies, right? And that's a good
Exactly.
problem to have.
That is a good problem to have.
So, Christopher, tell us how we can find you online.
So finding us online is pretty simple. You can go to GoAccredited.com. It's GoAccredited.com. I know that sounds difficult, but GoAccredited.com. We also have a landing page that's a little easier where you can go and fill out your information. That's called SBLoanStore.com. It's a lot simpler. We actually use that URL for a lot of our online users, and it stands for smallbusinessloanstore.com. But it's sbloanstore.com, and there's a whole form you can fill out that goes right to our internal email base. And we have over 100 representatives nationally that we service our clients with. But I get involved in a lot. It's important to me to make sure that our clients, our business owners, are getting the top service in the industry and making sure that we're the right fit. I know I say the right fit a lot. It's important for us that our businesses are successful.
Good for
Um,
you. Good
for
for
two
you.
reasons. One, we want to make sure that we're getting paid back.
Yeah.
But for the second part of that is, we want to build referrals, right? We want, if they need more capital in the future and they've grown their business and they're healthier, we're going to reduce their rate, right? So we want to be their consistent source, as long as we continue to be the right source for their capital. So their success is our success.
Christopher, in closing, your company really holds a strong belief in paying it forward. And I know during this holiday time, you're doing some very specific things. Tell me about that before we close.
I will. Actually, yesterday, Sunday, we spent a lot of time. We partnered up with an organization called My Connect Church, and we for the holiday we fed 140 families. Now this is not just we didn't feed. It wasn't a soup kitchen type environment. We actually went out and went shopping and bought days of food for each of these individual families so that they could actually celebrate and cook a meal for their families, not only for Thanksgiving, but for the days leading to Thanksgiving and the days following Thanksgiving. Really, so that they can, so it was families feeding fish. So it's us, you're providing the goods, but we fed over 140 families, and it's one of the more inspiring things that we've done. We did it last year, and the great thing to see this year, we've quadrupled what we did. But the great thing is that people that we actually helped last year were actually there because they become more fortunate, and we're actually helping other families this year by donating their time and actually donating meals as well. So
Wow, that says it all. That says it all.
it was an exciting and humbling experience to continue to be a part of, and it's just one of the things that we do on a regular basis to give back. Because the stronger our community is, and the stronger the business. We say business, but individuals, they are business owners, right? Whether they're part of a family or not, we want our community to be strong. It's very important to us.
Absolutely. Christopher Gravagna, what a joy to have you on the show, co-founder and CMO for GoAccredited Business Solutions. I wish you great success. Thank you for your inspiring story, and I'm really delighted to feature you, and I hope our listening audience checks you out at GoAccredited.com.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks, Christopher. Take good care. And I want to thank you all for tuning into Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.